Mr. H here. Good to hear from you yet again. Fear not those things that go bump in the night. You know they are coming. What you should be vigil for are the subtle and invisible things that will kill and maim when you least expect it. When the human heart is in control and it beats with murderous intent unbeknownst to its owner or those around. Her name, Patricia Baby Slayer Horton, 20. Instagram model and social butterfly extraordinaire. In today's lingo, that is a gentleman's term for promiscuous bimbettes and solid education or emotional ability to find a stable partnership. Location, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Date, early 2019. Patricia was a gifted girl, gifted physically. Some say genetically, but gifted nonetheless, with a body and beauty far beyond the norm. Almost everyone can pick at flaws within their physical structure that defy the strictest measures of classical or contemporary beauty. Legs too short, face ill-proportioned, hair thin and dull, skin irregular, birth defects, toes not sculpted to a particularly chiseled form or perfection, etc. And so most merely accept or suffer those consequences, while others vainly rush to plastic surgeons in hope that some alterations will make them more desirable to others, or more importantly, to themselves. Not so with Patricia Horton. Baby Slayer was one of those blessed few that needed nothing more than daily hygiene and scantily tailored clothes to display a perfect image in her mind and in the eyes of others. You may have seen her. Oh, you probably did. Across the internet, her image has graced 1 billion pages, or have been legally diverted for use as clickbait and advertising of the most trivial and ludicrous products available to mankind today. Her hourglass figure and lush hair framing wide, shining eyes penetrated instantly into the core libido of every man, and many women. There was a primal attractiveness about her that is keyed into deep human essence beyond culture or language. Patricia had deeper effect on personal contact. This sent men of all ages, men of lesser restraint and dubious intent, to rush forward like hungry curs eager for meat. Add on to that, Patricia was unable to find a man as perfect as she was. Her obsession with herself in mirrors and photos formed an expectation, a need to be around perfection on her level. And in this amusement park reality she built around her, sadly no one ever came up to the height regulation needed to ride that attraction. If you know what I mean. Everyone craved Patricia, but she craved no one. She merely craved herself. A trail of broken hearts were left in her wake, without even trying to engage hearts or crotches across her bow, until one day, when she was met by an attractive young man in Twitch. How they connected is still a mystery, but they had collided in some fashion, and things escalated quickly. Patricia found this man, barely past being a boy, to supersede her level of physical perfection. Stanley Manley, some would say. Wierkowski was 19. He was a budding internet sensation on TikTok and well known among giggly and unfortunate teenage girls and gay men over 35. A handsome, rugged fellow with unblemished skin and hands as smooth as a baby's bottom. His fortunes were on the rise as he marketed a simple line of beauty products made for men, and a copious variety of catchy phrases on his printed-on T-shirts and trucker caps. At least he wasn't selling his bath water. Anyway... Online video chatting turned into planned and cautious confrontation in real life, and despite spending fleeting moments together at restaurants and theaters every so often, keeping a platonic but simmering familiarity, both were drawn toward a closer relationship. For Patricia, she was unbelievably attracted to Stanley's undeniable beauty. Inwardly, he was just as desirably attentive and patient and understanding as the utmost fantasy prince she had ever dreamt within her mind. Perhaps even more so. Something about him cut into her core and was enshrouding her heart with invisible tentacles of ethereal control. Patricia was lost, spiraling out of control for the first time in her life. She loved him, but most she realized she loved his appearance. She craved to see him constantly. She even desired to see him more than she ever saw herself. She was hungry for him. She wanted to devour him, to hold him so tight while looking into a mirror over his shoulder, and squeeze their bodies so tight that they would become one human. One perfect form, one love forever. Her heart pounded. Soon, he was inviting her up to his place in Chicago, Illinois for the weekend. She agreed eagerly, with plans of her own, plans she never divulged to him. Plans to bed that boy down and conjoin themselves in a way she had never with any other person. She would taste the joys of physical indulgence and eat of the tree of knowledge. Yes! This was a heady moment, and she, as always, would lead herself into a new phase of life without regret or negotiation. A perfect life, filled by a perfect man, perfectly befitting of her judgment and desire. No sooner had she arrived within the airport when she was showered with gifts and a bouquet of bright red roses. She radiated as she left the plane, while all other mortal passengers looked like typical sacks of smelly garbage shambling across the terminals and baggage areas. Hundreds of passers-by gawked at the couple, in awe of their beauty. They would surely make a fine family once they run down their baser desires through repetitive acts of coitus, etc. It was affirming to these outsiders. Hope of a brighter future for humanity. Once back at Stanley's condo, a few seconds were spared before Patricia had thrown down her man and stripped him naked on the carpet. She was the aggressor, and she fed herself on her prey. Oh, part of her prey, at least. It didn't take long to snack on the first course, but this would be a lengthy meal of many courses, of sausage and gravy. I'm sorry, I do get carried away. I shall contain myself, contain my flippant passions. Anyway, their conjoining went through the afternoon, into the night, and until the early morning hour of dubious reputation, when the worst aspects of evil arise in our world. That was the time they faded into blissful sleep. Patricia, the slayer, had been impaled enough, and as she looked up to the ceiling and saw a mirrored reflection of two perfect humans laying naked together, she lost her mind to unconsciousness. When she awoke, it was still dark. However, her body was refreshed. Perhaps she had slept for a full day, perhaps not. There was no way to know. Patricia was unable to see sunlight because there were no windows. There were only stone walls and a concrete floor, with thick wooden floor joists above her, all illuminated by a mere 40-watt bulb dangling from an unceremoniously bland electronic cord dangling off the ceiling. She couldn't move. She was bound, hands and feet, to a large wooden chair. It was a huge chair, made for a giant person much longer than her 180-centimeter frame. An ample hole was clearly felt beneath her rear, her naked rear. She was completely naked in that chair, alone. Her screams of anguish brought her lover down the stairs. In the scant light, his concerned face showed pity and desire. "You can scream. Feel free to scream," Stanley told her. "You can do whatever you need to do to feel at ease, but you can never leave. I won't allow you." Patricia realized she had made love to a madman. A sadistic lunatic with plans so nefarious running through her mind that she felt she could die of a heart attack at any moment. But he assured her that she needn't worry. Stanley wasn't a murderer. He wasn't a creep. He merely was insecure and desired her more than anything. "You see," Stanley shyly related to Patricia, "I never had a steady relationship. You are all I ever wanted, and now I have you. All those other women, they would never stay with me. They all said there was something wrong with me, that I was too perfect. They said I couldn't be for real. They all ran. They all broke my heart. I never could hold on to a woman for more than a few days since I was 12. All I want is love. All I want is you." Stanley produced a large, new, shiny meat cleaver. The square blade reflected light across Patricia's wide eyes. She screamed for help. "Hush, darling," Stan cooed. He brought the cleaver down onto a fatty hunk of meat lying on a crude wooden block table out of the light. It was at that moment she could make out the objects beyond her cone of illumination. There was a titan side of oleaginous pork warming on that table. Stanley would repeatedly, maliciously, strike it into smaller and smaller chunks while glaring at Baby with insane eyes of a murderer. She cried out again, a cry stifled by choking as she breathed in her own tears dribbling down into her mouth. He continued to slam and decimate the meat before her. She was sure he was tenderizing it to torture her, to show her what was next for her. In some ways, she was perfectly correct. He had the intent to show her what would become of her. To defeat her crying, choking, wailing outbursts, Stan angrily slammed the cleaver one last time into a piece of meat and watched her sobbing to the ceiling, pleading for help. No one came. Her mouth open, crying out with guttural moans of pitiful helplessness. And then she was silenced forever. Stanley made sure she would never cry out in pain ever again. She was unaware that he had come closer, swiftly bridging their distance. To shove meat into her mouth, he pushed it back, filling more inside of her maw, and when she was filled, he held her mouth shut. "Now eat, my dear," he commanded. The taste of raw, slightly chilled pork was disgusting, but she did as he commanded, hoping to buy her time. When it was swallowed, he pushed more into her mouth and commanded her to do it again, and again, and again, and again. Afraid of death, Patricia would do anything he commanded her at that time. Her cries abated. Her stomach grew full. He kicked a plastic construction bucket under her chair below the hole. "If you need relief," he said warmly, "feel free. I'll clean you up." Then he proceeded to the table and slid something from behind the pork. It was a large, decorated birthday cake, dripping with the sugariest buttercream. Stanley cut a giant slice and brought it to her, offering her some. Oh, she ate it, afraid to deny him, and perhaps be slaughtered by this maniac. Stanley continued his story to his love. "This is how we have to be. My heart can't stand another to run from me. I can never lose you, ever. I must have you. You are mine now, and I am yours. Forever. You'll be happy, you'll be taken care of, and you'll never be able to run away from me ever because, well, I will make sure you will never run again." He shoved a huge piece of cake into her mouth. She tried to stop him. "Oh, please don't do that, dearest," her captor chided. "I am fully prepared for intravenous." She saw over his shoulder to a dark corner where a set of clear, fluid-filled sacks hung from a rolling armature, a needle and tube attached to them. Patricia eagerly ate. She hated needles more than eating. And that is how they came to be a loving couple. That is where the story ends. Except not quite. Patricia is now 660 pounds of woman, and no longer strapped to a chair. She's free to roam, though she cannot move very far or very fast. On the bright side, her love for Stanley overcame her fear and her anger. She developed a lovely case of Stockholm Syndrome and now lives happily in his basement, in a house somewhere in America. Oh, she isn't worried about herself. As much as she enjoyed seeing herself as an object of perfection, she now has no mirrors around. And all that her eyes feast on is the perfect image of her lover and keeper, the perfect image of her physically perfect Stanley. Sitting Bull is quoted as saying, "There are only two dogs inside of each man. One is evil and the other good. They fight each other constantly. When asked which one wins, I say, it is the one I feed the most." And in a strange way, Stanley fed his love, his bitch, and she has won him until death do they part. Let that one sink in. Lust is only skin deep, and Stanley sees through a lot of skin. A lot. And still desires Patricia more than anything in this materialistic and hedonistic world. Who is the monster now? Mr. H, over and out.
Like and subscribe before I die. And ring the little bell or you will surely go to hell.
Oh, we're telling spooky stories. This is not a spooky story. Oh, there's no way on the couch I can sit.
Depends how you look at it. It is kind of spooky.
I guess so.
Wait, that's it? That's the end of the story?
That is a